basically, Na'Vi is in theory the number one team in the world, especially because Gambit hasn't had a couple of good results for a while. They obviously won the Grand Slam. They won the last big tournament. Everyone's going to say they're going to win this game. Everyone's going to say they're probably going to win Blast entirely. In fact, I think most people are on the hype train that like they can potentially go for an era now or something like that. So, Paladin, start me out on this one. First of all, what do you think the chances are that Na'Vi wins this series? Do you have them as a heavy favourite?
I mean, honestly, I have to see the maps because in some cases, they're like Dust 2, for example. I think that there were some odd CT setups where they leave people on islands, on bomb sites, and they make them look like fools. Like, they put them in impossible scenarios. Like, Perfecto has to get a 3K in order to stay in the round. Like, some of these maps that they play can be really questionable, in my opinion. And I think that although that they are the number one team, they have a lot of firepower to pull them over the line in some of these scenarios where they should have no business in winning. And obviously, Simple pulls off a hat trick, or Electronic goes nuclear in a position that he shouldn't be getting multiple kills in. But obviously, this team is still very good because of that firepower. And I think that they should still be counted as the number one team in the world, but I think that there are still caveats and there's still ways that they can be pushed around, and people can obviously take series wins against them. Obviously, when Big beat them earlier at EPL, people wrote them off. There wasn't necessarily anything that they did special, but they worked them around on the veto. They could ban Inferno instantly. They love to ban Inferno in the first rotation, and that threw them off really easily. And Complexity, obviously, right now their perma ban is Inferno as well. So who knows if they can get a good veto out on here? There's no reason why they can't win.
If the gods are willing, I'm going to bet on Complexity to pick. This just makes it even more torture if they lose the game now that I had to do it about 4 times, and the whole time it's like the universe was like, just bet Na'Vi, just bet on Na'Vi. But I'm going to say, like I said, Complexity win. They win the series. But in fact, you know what? He's already sort of teased it there, so we'll just do it, Alan. And we'll talk about the teams and we'll go to the players and stuff in a minute. But let's actually talk now about the map pool, the veto potentially. Because as I alluded to, there are certainly punish picks you can do against Na'Vi. I will say, sometimes just because they're so good as a team, they do stuff like they just win in maps like Ancient. So you can't always, like, there's no such thing as like a guaranteed punish pick against Na'Vi. But I also think in line with what Paladin was saying, actually, sometimes Na'Vi will just do you a favour in the fucking veto. Like, there's a world where they'll just pick like Mirage, and that's a map where it's like people like Blame F love that fucking map. It's like basically their home ground, so you're just giving them a chance to it. So what do you think of the potential map veto and how that can influence things, Alan?
It's a very good question. I think the permabans are not going to move, even though you might look at Vertigo for complexity and the stats wise, they don't look great. Certainly with the old lineup, they were just fine, and I don't think Na'Vi would be ever willing to risk it when they're coming in as a favourites. But once you're beyond that point, this is really hard to predict. I do think Na'Vi will pick Mirage, but after that, I've got no idea. Complexity, as you said, they don't really like picking Overpass, but it's more of a question of how much do they feel of underdogs. The more underdog you feel, the more willing you are to take a risk in the veto and just say, we can't just stick to our comfortable map here. We need to take a risk and try and, throw them off or pick a map they're not ready for. So it could be an Overpass pick. They could go for something really crazy, Dust 2, for example. So I'm not entirely sure where this veto is going to go. From watching Na'Vi in the past, they're probably just going to play their comfortable maps. I don't think they really care. I think they're just going to play the Mirage, the Nukes. An awesome pick here would be Ancient. I think they're pretty sick at Ancient, but I don't think Na'Vi's going to take any risks. And the question really is, where will Complexity push this veto? Where will they send the third map? Do they have a good punish pick here? Because that's really their only chance for me in this series, is not letting Na'Vi just have 3 easy maps they like to play and just get run over because they got to stand in. So I'd like to see Cole take some risks here and really try and, throw Na'Vi off in terms of the maps.
I will say, as I alluded to, Na'Vi never really do themselves any favour in the veto because they just so often historically have gone Dust 2 Mirage. And basically, if you pick Dust 2, they pick Mirage, and vice versa, right? Or if you ban one, they pick the other. Which I always thought personally, look, obviously a map like that, like Mirage, Simple will dominate on. But what I don't get is, and this is one thing I'll actually give Blade credit for, I actually think he's started to get something of a handle, because in the last sort of 5 or 6 vetoes, they have picked Nuke, which, by the way, are you ready? They've on the last 11 times they've won all of them. They are 100% win rate on Nuke. Now, if people don't know the map Nuke, if you're really good on that map, unless the opponent's like equally good, you should just pick that every time. Like the chances, if we're equally good on Dust 2 and equally good on Nuke, pick fucking Nuke. It just logically makes more sense. Like there's so many more ways you can win the game. I also think, by the way, we start talking about players now. That particular map, I think that's just simple, mate. I don't even believe Na'Vi are actually geniuses on that map. Like I've seen them on T side run the clock out and not get in a position and stuff. But the problem is, because of the way Simple plays that CT side, where he effectively just goes wherever he wants. Well, the CT economy's in the toilet right now. So if you just have a superstar AWP who's always in the right position and kills everyone, you're just going to get free CT rounds that normal teams don't get. They just play 5 spots and all stay there. So if we start talking about the players, listen, it's the segment where we all just freaking wax lyrical about Simple, basically. So Paladin, you've never actually done a video, I've noticed, yet on Simple, right? So give me some of your thoughts on this player. And obviously it's up to you what angle you go in. Most of us just fucking basically below the guy constantly, but I'll see where you want to go on this one.
I mean, the thing is the system for Na'Vi revolves around him, and I think that if you don't play around him, you're being stupid, frankly. But I did a video on Perfecto, and I think that Perfecto as a player is there to elevate Simple. Like he's a very good anchor on bomb sites. He stalls for so long that he allows for Simple to basically do whatever he wants, and he's so damn good at getting into the bomb sites even when utility is down and making the situations seem that are seemingly impossible possible. And I think a lot of it comes down to how the system works around him. I think Boomich used to be a big liability on that team, and now he's more refined in how he plays the game, and he's a little bit more aware of how sacrificial he is to support Simple, and so he gets all that info for Simple. Simple has all the info, and at that point, if Simple has all the info, he can kill everybody. It's just the nature of how he plays, and I think that's one of the best parts about him. Like he's essentially mastered the game, because there are some players where it's like even if they have all the info, they get that overload of information and they don't understand who to pick and who to kill at what time. But he has that just general awareness as to okay, I have positions on, like if I'm in a 5v3, I have a position on all 3 players. I can single them out 1, 2, 3 and wherever they are and take over the round on my own. And I know I can run the risk as to whether or not I should take this fight or not. And even if it is a risky fight, he'll still take it and win it. So yeah, I think the system of Na'Vi overall is just elevated Simple to heights that I've yet to see any player ever do.
What do you think then, Alan?
Well, obviously, Simple just completely unreal. Back to his old self, essentially. And to be honest, with Simple, even just outside of CS and esports, he's one of the best sportsmen I've ever seen. And just unbelievable skill and completely unreal. So we won't really wax lyrical too much about Simple because we've done many a time. I think Electronic's an interesting one. I think he's changed a fair amount as a player since we first saw him. I think when we first saw him, very raw, very dependent on his skills, more so, more a question of how Zeus was going to use him in those old lineups. And I think now he is super confident at just calling around himself and just saying, I'm going to do this. Let's play this setup. I'm going to push in. I'm going to play aggressive. And kind of in tandem with Simple, there's like nowhere on the map they can't be aggressive. There's nowhere they can't have impact. They're just an absolute nightmare to play against. I bet for in-game leaders playing against them when they're on CT, it's just an absolutely massive pain in the ass because you don't know what to call. You don't know when they're going to get aggressive. You don't know how they're going to play against you. So I think Electronic makes them so much more difficult to play against, and that duo with Simple was very powerful. And then rounding out the lineup, obviously Bit was never a superstar signing, but going from a player like Flamey, who had his issues and can always play the right roles, just Bit, he's a solid role player. He plays his spots well. He gets good numbers. It's all you need in this sort of team. You've already got all the firepower. You've got the calling. So just have a solid player who can slowly develop, and he'll only get better with time. So I think the lineup just makes quite a lot more sense than some Na'Vi lineups in the past, which haven't made sense in terms of the lineup. So kind of all firing on all cylinders at the moment, and certainly Simple and Electronic are the kind of main basis of that.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me is finally the lineup makes sense, like you're saying. Before, there was always like 2 or 3 players where it's like, does this guy really fit his role? In case of Boomich, like, does he even know his role? Like, is he really the IGL if he's doing these moves, you know? Because the problem is before, Boomich would basically sometimes die first, but in a way where it's like, why were you just jiggle peeking that corner the whole time? Well, we're going to execute now. Like that, like literally, essentially, you were gambling that you see someone, but probably can't even kill them, or you die. Like, that's a terrible risk benefit award. Like, if you're the IGL, you're not supposed to make money. So I actually think the bizarre thing is, this is why I actually think now they don't need a real IGL. I think low key, the IGL basically is simple. As in, as we've been saying, you feed him all the info and everyone else's game is sort of been tailored to his, so that when you give him all the resources, he carries the round and wins the round. So basically, it's how does Simple want to move in the round and everyone else is to facilitate him. So bizarrely, they've taken that sort of bizarre aggression that Boomich had, and it's like they've just told him, right, do it, but you're just going to be the entry, basically. Just rush in. And obviously, what's bizarre as well is, because sometimes he is just sort of jumping, creating space, getting info, that thing where he was doing the gimmick where he kept using SMGs all the time, that even works for that. It actually bizarrely like works enough. I will say, I won't say it's like great, because if you didn't have the biggest carry of all time coming behind you, you don't win all those rounds, but it doesn't matter right now. Right now, the world is just about Simple, and can you give him a chance to win the game? Now, sadly, that does mean when he wins the game, a lot of you don't get any credit, but some of you don't deserve any credit. There we go. I said it, right? So let's talk about some of the other players. I'll say this, right? I know everyone's hyped about Bit, because I will say this is the most insane rookie story since basically Ziwu or something, as far as I can tell. Because the guy, he didn't even, like, forget the idea. I always say there's a competitive ladder, right? And it's true, we haven't had enough lands that he's really, like, proven it, etc. But, like, this guy, there wasn't a ladder. He just got fucking, like, someone threw a rope down and just took him up the whole building. Because the actual expectations for this guy were totally unreasonable earlier in the year when they were putting in the line. Like, he never ever played tier 1, and then you go to a tier 1 team that's in every semi-final. Like, that's actually a prime recipe to ruin a person's career and get you tossed out 3 months later, and you have to go slowly up the ladder after that. Like, to really prove yourself when people think you're shit, it's never going to happen. What's mad about Bit is, yeah, he does frag out and he is incredible, but I still think he's very, very raw on this team. It's actually, as Paladin said, it's Perfecto that impresses me the most out of the players that have developed, because again, people forget he was basically a rookie when that Katowice event happened at the beginning of 2020, and then we went online. So to me, technically, especially online, he is still a rookie. But man, this guy, it doesn't make sense to me how we went from being like an okay player to, no joke, he actually looks like one of the smarter players in World Counter-Strike. I don't even have to say CIS region, make it like a diss. Like, he actually looks, no joke, like they found like something they haven't had in World Counter-Strike for a long time in CIS region, which is like a smart support player. You'd have to go way back and people are going to think this is a joke, but to players like Seized and Edward to find that in the past, and then we're talking like 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So, Alan, what are your thoughts on Perfecto?
It's bizarre. Bizarre in the fact that when he first came into Na'Vi, I don't think he was even playing these roles, to be honest. I think he was a bit all over the place. And then obviously when they won Katowice in 2020, it was a big surprise. And seeing him perform like that was a bit crazy. It's just, at least for me, it's a bit, he definitely goes under the radar for me. And because of Simple and Electronic, I don't really think about him that much. But potentially he's good in the sense that I haven't noticed him either way. He's just been absolutely fine. He's never been a problem. He's always played his role correctly. You know, you never look at rounds and you say, oh, Perfecto's done something stupid here. You know, Simple makes some mistakes sometimes. I don't see Perfecto making that many mistakes, and he plays his role perfectly fine. And again, a bit kind of the same with Bit, to be honest. It's just like, when you've got players as good as Simple as Electronic and they're going to go get aggressive and open up rounds, we don't need some incredible, you know, star player who takes up a lot of space, a lot of resources, who calls a lot around himself. We need someone who can play the roles he's put in, who can be absolutely solid. He's incredibly consistent as well, Perfecto, and these sort of things. So again, in this sort of lineup, Bit, Perfecto, these sort of players are just, I don't know where they came from, but they're just amazing to round out this squad. And clearly, at least online and at Cologne on LAN, it's been looking great for them so far.
Yeah, by the way, as Paladin alluded to earlier, he actually has a video on his channel about Perfecto, which basically outlines a lot of the things we're discussing here. Because one of the things I actually do find very impressive as well is I know people look at the clutches and all that jazz with Perfecto and like, oh, look, he actually has interesting skills. It's like, no, the crazy thing about him is what Alan said there, which is he'll never lose you the round. Like, he basically is never a liability in a team that in Na'Vi used to have loads of liabilities and leaks all over the place. So one of the most underrated skills, it will always be in Pro Counter-Strike, because it's essentially invisible, is not dying. If you can actually not die while still being useful, holding your position, giving info, comming, and running the clock down and delaying like the terrorists getting onto the site, for example, that is actually one of the most sleeper OP qualities you can have in the game. Because everyone thinks it's about out shooting people, taking a duel. Sometimes it's not taking a duel and making them take 7 seconds extra and use one extra piece of utility that wins you like 2 rounds in a game. Like, that's actually, it'll never ever, like I say, there's no highlight of like, but he stayed alive for 10 seconds. Like, that doesn't exist as a highlight. But if you're actually like a coach or an IGL and you see that, and especially when you start to see it happen over and over again, you're like, fuck, that's why this team's going to be really hard to beat. Like, it's not that, you know, we have to like go away from where Electronic's position. It's what are we going to do when we get onto this guy's position? Like, he's actually playing proper Counter-Strike. And again, like I say, there aren't rookies who play like this. They don't exist. Like, rookies tend to be the Flames bit in model of like, they have mad aim, and what you do is you just sort of like, it's like a fucking dog. You have to know when to let them off the leash and then when to sort of be like, right, don't do anything. Perfecto looks like they just go, look, you figured your shit out, mate. You play like that, and then we've sorted that part of the game. We solved it, basically. In some senses, maybe I could compare him to Messi in that regard. I also thought he sort of came up pretty inexperienced, but then again, just showed like experience beyond his years in knowing how to play the game, how to play off other people, how to fill in what are in theory shit spots. And here's the thing, if you play a shit spot, you're not supposed to be really good. But if you're not bad, you have fucking done your job. You have rounded out our squad. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.